Welcome everyone to our live home service summit webinar series. As you know, we do this the first Thursday of every month, and I'm always bringing on amazing people like John to talk about how to franchise a business in home services. And I got to know John a little bit not too long ago, just before Christmas. We've met a few times at different functions, kind of tracked his story and his growth really over the last couple of years, and have always wanted to have him get on here and tell us how he's done it. So with that, I'll just kind of preface with, if you haven't been on the show in the past, we're going to spend about 45 minutes where I've got a bunch of great questions for John. He'll answer for us and give us some background on what he's accomplished. And feel free at any moment in time, there's a little bottom right, you'll see a chat button. You can hit that and it'll pull up a little side channel that'll allow you to kind of talk with us as we're live here. So feel free to load that in with any questions you have for either John or I, and we'll make sure we get to those near the end of the interview. And then, we'll make it a interactive, fun experience. So let me go ahead and just give you some background on John. I've got his bio here, which I'll read for you, and then we'll jump right into the story of every hero, how they started and how they got going. So John Evans is the founder of Everline Coatings and Services, parking lot line striping and pavement maintenance brand that is changing the game in an entire industry. With a focus on franchisee support, innovation, exclusive durable products, and an unrelenting drive for success, John has led Everline to being a force to be reckoned with in an underdeveloped industry. And it was great actually backstage when John and I were talking. And I know for those of you who have been on the show before, you know how much I love EOS. And it's always refreshing when I talk to somebody who uses that as a means to run their business, because we kind of speak the same language, and it's great to hear how John leverages that same system for his own business. So I'm sure we'll talk about that as well.
Sure.
John's entire life has been surrounded by franchising. His parents were multi-unit owners. He owned and operated one of the highest performing student painting franchises while in university. Which student painting franchise concept was it?
College Pro Painters.
Of course, College Pro. Yeah. I got some experience with that as well. It doesn't surprise me that you'd be a top performer as well. And so now today he's building a system that's made by for franchisees by franchisees. Obviously, that background is critical. In 2015, John won the prestigious Grand Prize Award for the IFA's Next Gen in Franchising competition. You must know Carmelo, don't you?
I do.
You and Carmelo are probably like best friends.
We are
on both sides of the country, and you both did Next Gen, and Carmelo's brilliant as well. I mean, the guy is just so impressive. In 2020, he was invited back to participate in the All Stars program, and in November 2019, he appeared on CBC's. For all those of you who don't know, that's Canadian Broadcasting, CBC, right? Corporation.
Yeah. Corporation.
So it is Canada. Dragon's Den's kind of like the
Shark Tank.
What's the one? Shark Tank in the U.S. That's right. I have seen a couple of Dragon's Den. I think it's better. I think Dragon's Den's better because it's Canadian. But there he successfully pitched by getting a deal with the Dragons, and since then, Everline has been expanding fast across Canada. Grew from 17 locations to 108 in a rapid expansion effort. I'm curious, John, before we jump into your backstory, you got an offer from the Dragons.
Yes.
Did you take it?
On camera, I did, yes.
Yeah.
And then of course, behind the scenes, there's a lot more to it. So we ended up not doing the deal. But I think at the end of it, I got a friend out of it. Somebody I can call and for insight and things like that, which was super helpful, especially during the COVID years, when we actually had adjusted, we pivoted. Remember the pivot, buzzword back then, to performing disinfecting services. And so Mangini, we did the deal with, was a brewer. So she was my first call during that time, and we had some interesting conversations there. So, and then she had great insight as a Canadian operating in the United States as well, that kind of thing.
You know what? So I've heard that actually happens a lot in all these Shark Tank deals. They come on the show. It's really a PR move, right? Yep. If you know Omar and Nick, as I'm sure as well from College Hunks, the same kind of thing. They did, I think, Foxes Who Pack Boxes was their concept they actually brought on TV. It was a PR move, really, and they got an offer, and they went backstage, and rarely do these deals actually end up getting done. Once in a while they do, but it sure looks like it on TV, like it was all negotiated in that 15-minute session. All the deal terms are struck, but I'm really glad that you were able to experience that and have that help you leverage. How many deals do you think you sold with Everline because of that TV show? Like how many?
So when I went on, I had about 8 locations at the time, and we rapidly expanded to 16. I guess within, because I was maybe growing at a rate of maybe between 1 and 3 a year at that point. We were really small, still tinkering with our model, and
Yeah,
really slow control growth. And then we I guess doubled our size to 16 within a few months of all that. So the kind of the timing of it was all pretty wild because we had aired in November of 2019. And
yeah.
so all of those 8 were in training around March 2020. And so then that was
Oh, geez.
a massive, I guess, issue, of course, at the very beginning of 2020
Yeah,
because, or I guess of the pandemic, because I was, extremely top heavy with brand new franchisees. And they had, and then of course the shutdowns happening. If you remember back then, of course, nobody had any idea what was going to happen. And so that was a unique challenge.
I
That's for
bet.
sure.
You know
It's,
what? I think our listeners would love to hear how you got on the TV show. Was that something like you had an agent that helped you pitch the TV show, or did you just like reach out to them yourselves? Or how did that happen?
So it's funny. I thought it was going to be that simple. I actually did go to Carmelo, who was also on Dragon's Den. So Carmelo was College Pro, Dragon's Den, Next Gen. We're kind of a carbon copy of one another in a way. But I was like, hey, did you have something like somebody you could call? Maybe I can call and pitch something. He's like, nah, man, I just did it traditionally. So they had an open casting call downtown Calgary, and I got in line with my little booth. And it
Come
was just in
on.
a room that they put us in, and it was just I was meeting all the other pitchers was an interesting experience because the vast majority of them were like, I have an idea for a business, and they did have an
Yeah.
actual business, so I got to hear
Okay.
the wildest ideas. And then so I went. It was my turn, and I put up a little trade show booth that I had, and I just said, "Hey, I do parking lot line striping and pavement maintenance. This is what we do." And what was I think the winning strategy was not pitching the business because you could have the best business in the world. It was pitching the segment. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the Dragons paint lines in the studio and have a little painting, line painting contest, that kind of thing. And so the producer, you could see his gears are turning, like that would look real good on TV. And so that's kind of
Uh-huh.
what got us there.
I want to spend more time on this because I just years ago in my undergrad at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, which is where I was born and raised, and then actually as well during my master's, I actually five-star painting was partly started because of a pitch competition that I did. That back then they didn't have these TV shows, so there was these competitions that they'd hold where they'd bring kind of the dragons of the local market were venture capitalists, right? And it was a business plan competition, and I'd go and pitch, and we actually found one of the judges at that pitch competition was and is one of the largest venture capitalists here in Utah.
Mm.
And he ended up, I won second place in this kind of statewide event. And he contacted me after, this was like in 2006, and said, listen, I don't know really what your business is, but I was really impressed by you and I want to make an investment. And so we ended up doing a deal with him. He joined our board. He was like a tech venture capitalist and brilliant, actually. And this project is worth noting for those founders who are on these calls. You mentioned how Dragon's Den helped you get a mentor. You got a relationship out of it. You didn't close a deal, but there's somebody there that had kind of walked the world of entrepreneurship for some time and can bring you some value at crucial times like COVID and so forth. So I would love for you, if you don't mind, like when you were thinking about pulling together your pitch,
Mm.
how did you, what were you thinking? Were you thinking, I got to create something that was TV production material, or were you trying to get like a 15-minute perfectly programmed pitch, like an elevator pitch for a minute or two? Like, tell me how you just came about putting that together.
So I'm not a guy who can memorize pitches, like I'm a stream of consciousness, whatever comes out, comes out. But I knew I had to just really rock the first 30 seconds. I said, if I can memorize 30 seconds, that's what
Yeah.
I'm going to do. And then so the producers actually warned me. They said they're going to try and mess you up because that creates good TV, right? They're going to try and find a way to interject it is something you say in your opening pitch to just totally discombobulate you
Yeah.
and all that. And so for me, it was a lot of refinement of just this impenetrable stream of consciousness coming out that I just, because I said, hey, this is who we are. This is, looking for my business. This is my service, and I'm not doing it alone. So come on out. So I immediately had a demonstration within 15 seconds of what we did, and then I was like, and so we're the first people in Canada here that have expanded across the I guess the Canadian landscape with the service and things like that. So, and then it really turned into just to a lot of just rapid fire questions. Now,
Yeah.
what was interesting is that I didn't really quite understand or know that this really was a TV show. I thought it was a serious meeting. Like I'm watching TV, thinking
Yeah.
it's pretty reasonably legit. That's coming out the added out of it. And so I remember when they came out, we were gonna have the dragons paint the lines, and he just I was ready for a real business meeting, and they said, well, you're gonna have him drive that, like just really exaggerated things coming at me, and I'm like, that's not what normal people say in a thing. I was like, this is all fake. This is fake. And so that loosened me up a little bit. And so then they came, then they just try to throw real rapid fire questions, at you
Yeah.
there. And just, and also to like really unfair questions and just to try and get a facial expression out of you so that they
Yeah.
can actually edit it and use it in different ways and that kind of thing. So it was an interesting whole experience for that. So yeah, well, because once that realization, once that curtain was lifted, it was like, all right, whatever comes. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long was the entire pitch, and what was the actual, when it was all refined down to what was shown on TV? Like, what was the
I
difference?
filmed for about 75 minutes. So
Oh, wow.
and it was down
Okay.
to 8 minutes, so they ended it there. Like I had an argument with one of the dragons. There was one of the dragons there, Jim for Living. He has awesome pizza. It's a chain up here in Canada,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he went out really early. And to me, he was my guy, right? And and it was going on in my head in that time. I was like, oh crap, what is going to happen here? And then started looking over, then and just like, I remember just a moment of just pitch harder, let's just go. And spent going off from there. And that whole thing was not really highlighted in the pitch there. They really just focused on, just a lot of validation for the concept because they had properties and they had issues getting these services done on. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Love it. Thanks for giving us that background. So we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I know that Dragon's is a big part of the story for Everline, but we'd just love for you to just dive into how you got started. Why did you choose painting parking lots? Give us
Sure.
the origination story.
Absolutely. So I was a franchisee with College Pro, and I outgrew the program. I was graduating school, and I actually, when I was on the hunt for my next opportunity, I actually went to a franchise show here in Calgary, and I was wanted to continue running my own business, and wasn't sure if I had the skills to go out on my own there at that point. And at that franchise show, I was walking around and I saw a paint sprayer on wheels that was kind of a little cobbled together, and me coming from the home painting industry, I recognized these were Graco cars. This was a Graco sprayer, and so it was familiar to me, just very different. So of course, walk over to the booth, and that's when I got introduced to the line striping industry. And so I, started really what was described to me is that these guys were not actually awarding a franchise. They were actually licensing a durable traffic marking product. They were trying to find other line stripers in the area to go and do this, or consider training up somebody new to go in and begin this whole thing. And so that's, it was a long shot at the time, but, quite a miraculous connection there at that piece. So we got started talking about the industry, and a lot of it sounded a lot like what I was dealing with in the home services, the home painting industry, is that, you're dealing with a relatively low sophisticated set of overall contractors, right? That's, I mean, there's of course very well branded, great, I guess, painting contractors out there, but it's kind of the line painting industry was proven to be a microcosm of that environment. There were less line painters, but even far less, next to no competent or not competent, sophisticated, I guess, competitors is the better way to put it. And so me coming from a franchise system where I was the more sophisticated person coming in a world where if you get a extension roller and a paintbrush, you're a professional painter, I figure I can apply a lot of those same principles to the line painting world. And so
Yeah.
that would be the main idea.
And so like, tell me about the hustle. Like, how do your first customer, how did you win them?
It was pick up the phone and start dialing, old Wolf of Wall Street style was the main thing. I didn't have a lot of money. I was fresh out of school. I mean, and I bought all this equipment, and really it was Google and LinkedIn, looking up property managers, operations managers, driving around to different malls. And I remember just in the very beginning, in fact, actually the very first sales call in Everline history, total disaster. I always like telling that story because I was in a fraternity in university, and I knew a sorority girl who was a property manager for a medium-sized mall, and we knew each other. And I said, hey, I'm going to make the first sales call, a friendly one, make it happen. And I call, and I just did not have any sort of pitch or anything like that. And so I was like, hey, it's John, what's up? She's like, oh, hey, what's going on? We catch up a little bit. And I was just like, yeah, I'm doing line painting and I'm good. And just like, and she's like, no, thank you. And I was like, no.
I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. You want
exactly. So, but so that was like the first sales call, but the first win, I mean, really, it was really simply, we have a process that we send mail outs first. We do follow up emails, follow up phone calls to get the attention of busy property managers. Because every time their phone calls or their phone rings, it's either some sort of their building's on fire or leaking or something, or it's contractor soliciting. So you got to make through that noise, right? And so that was the very beginning of just being persistent in those initial calls. And then eventually I got one, Deerfoot Meadows Mall here in Calgary. And that was I
know where that is.
Yeah, I'll take a quote. I was like, there we go.
And you closed it.
To close it. Yeah.
So now what has me really curious is, how do you know how to charge? Because you've never done a job before.
Yeah, no, great question. So that group that had that I guess unit in the franchise show, and they were not actually awarding a franchise. They were selling a license for a more durable type of traffic hardening products, more durable, environmentally friendly. So I actually bought the initial license for that, so I could enter the market with a differentiated product. And in fact, we're actually just about to we're like a days away from acquiring that company. So it's pretty exciting.
No way.
Yeah, because they're a big part of our DNA. And so anyways, he had been in the business for 20 plus years at that point. So he helped me get started with that, but it was still relatively half-baked. I had to bring in a lot of my previous experience as a franchisee in there with me, and just understanding, okay, I have to understand the spread rates of my material, the labor rates. So I was able to get some, how many lines can you paint an hour and things like that. And then so I built out an initial, just an Excel spreadsheet just for myself. If there's 100 lines, it should take X amount of time. If your labor rate is this, if your material is this, what should your margin be? Things like that. And then so I started playing not a unit-based type pricing model where it was like $5 a line. It was actually a margin-based, which was another key differentiator for us, because it allowed us to get tighter, but right, of course, on our estimates than a lot of our competitors there at the time. And so that's still the method that we use there today.
I love it. One of the things you said there, and I want to spend some time on, because I think every business owner in franchising, it's critical to be different and to be differentiated. And you brought up two things there that I thought were valuable, that worth digging into. One was the actual technology that you're using to paint the lines. You bought a license for it. You said it was like eco-friendly and it had some, like, what was, when you saw that, was it like, oh, I have an angle, this is gonna, or was it more like, I just need to figure out a way to paint lines? Like, was that actually, intentional, or was it kind of accidental and you realize now, oh no, I actually do have something that's a little unique compared to someone else myself?
It was a combination of all these things. Remember, so I was 23 years old at this time, so not, it was still a little bit of shooting from the hip there at the time. But in
Yeah.
hindsight, I think the young me was thinking is that there was also what also drove me this way, I guess down this direction, is that there was the Canadian government in some states were beginning to ban oil-based traffic paint on the roads, the guy who was pitching me in that booth, he was telling me this is a major event that's happening and no one's really paying attention to it. There's a huge opportunity on the side of this, and so I saw the forest through the trees on that, saying there's going to be a moment where a more durable product is going to be required, because if you can't use oil-based traffic paint anymore, that was the stuff that worked well enough. And now we had
Yep.
to use acetone-based or water-based traffic paint, which lasts half as long at best. And
Yep.
and that was going to cause some issues. So I think that for us, for me at the time, it was okay. I'm going to lean into this, become an early adopter, and then have that edge. And at the same time, begin an education campaign as a way to get in to create a different conversation with our clients versus, hey, can I come paint your lines? To, hey, can I come paint your lines? But also, can we talk about this? This legislation change that's about to happen that does affect you. Like
Oh
nobody's
yeah.
talking about that with you. And also, too, your high traffic areas, they're going to wear away faster. And how can I solve that problem? And so it took a couple of
Yep.
years because most people didn't register that the traffic paint wasn't going to last. But then once
Yeah.
they saw it, they saw all that drum I was banging for a couple of years was true, and it really took off at that point.
So did you guys kind of shift to kind of maintenance contract where they just have you come back every year, or do they just call you whenever they see the lines expire?
So it's in our industry, a multi-year contract. It's going more into that direction, but
Okay.
traditionally, it's usually on an annual budget basis. So
Okay.
we see, particularly in Canada, the northern states, they do get their lines done every year.
Yeah.
And then it's usually about 18 months or so down south, just from the heat and traffic and things like that. But
Yep.
still, it's a relatively frequent, I guess, operating model, or I guess expense model there. But really, as long as you have the relationship in the B2B sales world, if you're their guy, you're their guy. And until you drop the
Yeah.
ball, you're the guy. So
Yeah.
that's the model, and then that's why we've been able to grow as much as we have.
Yeah. I love that. If you don't mind, you mentioned your experience with College Pro as a franchisee. You kind of hinted at the fact that some of the things you learned there were useful to you as you were launching this concept. I love that you're doing this when you're 23 years old. I love hearing about young entrepreneurs. I think I actually was just at a game, a Utah Jazz game last night, and this kid comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Scott," and I forgot I had my name tag on,
Mm.
and so I didn't realize that I just thought he knew me. I'm like, oh, so I just kind of stepped in and started engaging with this person. He said, "No, I'm just a kid. I don't know who you are, but I know you're an entrepreneur, and I just want to learn." And we
Mm.
just got talking about this kid that wants to be an entrepreneur at age 20. And I just
That's
love it.
awesome.
I'm like, anytime I can find somebody in that time of life to be helpful to them is just, I love it. So I'd love for you, if you don't mind, just take us back to that moment in time when you're, 19 to 23 and you've been operating a College Pro painting franchise.
Mm.
What would you say were some of the biggest takeaways that you got from running a painting franchise? And
Mhm.
then what you did learn, what did you take from there to your business at Everline?
So many. I mean, I could go on the whole call for this. I think what comes to mind immediately, of course, I would say conflict resolution and people management, basic marketing concepts and guerrilla marketing, going out and getting your whatever your goal is, as well as to understanding, because in College Pro there was it's a 1 year term. So it's meant for people while they're in school
Yep.
to do it. And so it was interesting to me to see that there would be the same territory, the same market that would have wildly different results year over year, depending on who the operator was in there.
Yeah.
So to me, and then so me, I buddied up with just the high performers, and that was the group that I wanted to hang out with, because I would just
Yeah.
now be just a higher level of conversation, and that would bleed into my business as a result of that there too. So again,
Yeah.
in a real roundabout way. It was a way to just, like keeping in a high performance type mindset. What was another, I guess, key element there, and then going, of course, into Everline, like just the basic foundations of consistent activity that you can measure generally results or ends up in consistent results. And as long as you kind of figure out the metrics, as long as you do these things, you should expect to get this thing. And so I think that as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old learning all that, that was critical because when I bought the license from Alex from TBL Durables, the durable traffic marketing product, I just immediately, the first thing I did as soon as I was awarded that, I went to spreadsheets, right? I went and started to say, how many quotes do I need to do? I've started to guess, what do I think my average job size is going to be? Things like that. So it's in that those core skills of running the business at that time really helped.
That's great. I want to just double click on a couple of things you said because I think they're so valuable to be said. And John, thanks for your question. I'll get to it in just 1 second. What I heard was choose your peers wisely.
Mm-hmm.
If you, as a business owner, CEO, founder of a home service brand, you want to be moving in circles of people that are performing.
That's right.
Right. And so just like you noted right away, and it's totally true. And I think every franchisor can say the same thing. It's like you've got a territory that is in your market right now that's underperforming. The person leaves, a new person comes in, and all of a sudden that exact same territory just explodes. Why? Well, because it's the person, it's the leader,
Correct.
It's that individual. We all know that top performers are the people we want to spend time with. So as a leader of a franchisor, make sure you find people that excel and that you can look up to and that can be in your peer group. I can say that when I started 5 Star Painting in 2004, but really when we got our investor in 2006, and then we started to grow in about 2007, a guy named Craig Donaldson, who's at the time was the CEO of a brand called ChemDry, he made a small investment in our company, joined our board, and became an advisor for years. Today, he's the CEO of Authority Brands, one of the largest brand conglomerates in home service franchising, and was a real mentor and help. And the guy's amazing. Like, those are the people I want to spend time with because that's how I elevate myself as a leader. And so that is, I think, great advice and a great reminder in all aspects of our life. If you want to be excellent at anything, find people who are excellent at those things and then spend time with them because they'll kind of help you get there. So let's come back to John's question. What was the most difficult part of moving your Canadian business model into the United States?
Oh, that's a great question. I think so. I would say a couple of things. One, we had achieved, we were at about 17 locations in Canada before we launched the United States, and I actually I got connected actually with with Franchise Fastlane actually, and they took a look at our whole business, and they were saying, well, hey, John, this is actually pretty good. I'm like, isn't? I don't know. I'm kind of operating here on my own. I didn't have a really that high level of a view of the business. And they said, we think this is going to make a big splash here in the United States. Let's work together. So I did about 14 months or so of preparation. Because what I knew is I didn't know how the Americans work, because the American market is loaded with Canadian carcasses, right? Of those that say, hey, I'm doing pretty well here in the Canadian market. It is different. The culture is different. The buying, behaviors is different. And I knew I didn't want to be one of those guys just walk into, just all that. And, all the climate's completely different. The business model is completely different. So I did about 14 months, raised a bit of capital, and also brought on various consultants that were experienced in scaling US-based brands. And I had them come in and I had them pour through all of my stuff. I said, Americanize this. I took all the U's out of labor and honor and all that kind of stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
But also too, just that, hey, the American audience is like, this is a little gray. It needs to be a lot more black and white. stateside. And so I think that was probably the most initial challenging piece. There was the time, the expense of going through that due diligence before we had launched. And then once we had launched, we expected to grow at a rate of maybe 1 to 3 locations per month, which was a huge, adjustment there for us, right? Because we were at, maybe 1 to 5 locations per year prior to that. And so we got ready for that rate. And then once we got going and Vastnet started presenting us, we grew rapidly as a result of that. And so then I would say that by far the most challenging piece of that was rapidly scaling, like shifting your whole strategic plan while you're adding on like 7 to 10 franchisees a month for the first little bit. And then on top of that, just the timing of it, I had when I was thinking about the grander strategic kind of timing and placement of it, I was like, we were still in COVID. There was a point where I was planning all this, and I couldn't even get across the border. So, and finally I said, okay, vaccines are coming out, we're going to start opening up a little bit now. Like we're going to start traveling. If I can time this expansion to be with the living with COVID phase, right? Then this is that I think that will be a really interesting time to enter in the market. It'll be a little chaotic. I definitely underestimated how chaotic it would be. And in that in 22, there's of course inflation, ramping up like crazy. No one knew where it was going to end. You had supply chain issues of every single kind that you can expect. Remember there was like, ship stuff off from the Pacific Ocean, waiting weeks to get into ports and things like that. Just what a disaster that was. So we couldn't get equipment. So I was saying navigating that plus scaling up with our franchisees and at the same time learning the individual markets of the Americans, because we knew how it works in a seasonal business in Canada. We did not know how it was going to work in a full season area like in Texas or in Florida or whatever, right? And that's where we went and opened up our first location. As I just went straight down to Houston, so that's where our U.S. office is. And so we're going to head down there first, and we're going to go back up, that kind of thing. So just a lot of interesting challenges related to just this rate at which we grew, hyper growth in an extremely supply chain strained environment. So that was fun.
John, you said a few things in there really worth noting. And by the way, John, thanks for asking. John, who asked the question, thank you for asking the question, because I think this question needs to be asked going both directions, right? Like for a U.S. entity going up to Canada, you have the similar kinds of issues as going from Canada to the U.S. And by the way, Five Star Painting started in Canada. We went from Winnipeg to Calgary to Edmonton, then down to Utah and Las Vegas. So that was kind of our flow. But you said a few things I think are really worth noting. One is you needed to pick a market in the U.S. you were going to enter and operate, which is just like what we did. Our first U.S. market was here in Salt Lake City and then also Las Vegas, Nevada. We operated ourselves 2 corporate locations in painting, and we got to know the business very well.
Absolutely.
So that was, those things are key. You chose Houston. Carmelo, I think, is also in Texas. I'm not mistaken.
He's in Florida.
He's in Florida. Okay. Yeah. So, that is, I think, a wise move. Get to know the market. I think second is, there are legal elements to this that you have to be aware of, right? Trademarking in Canada is different than trademarking in the US. Right. So the Everline trademark, you may have it in Canada. Well, now you've got to get that same trademark in the US. And by the way, in franchising, you need to provide a trademark. That's kind of the thing you sell is intellectual property. So, you need to get a good attorney that does IP-based work, does the application. We had complications with getting our Five Star Painting brand, word mark, trademark in the U.S. In fact, we had people oppose it, and it delayed us getting that granted for almost 5 years because we hadn't thought that out at the beginning. And the same thing happens going north. I actually own a brand today where our brand in the U.S. is trademarked, but we can't get the brand trademarked in Canada because someone else has it. And so now we got to think about what's a new, how we're going to do it there. You need good attorneys. The FDD in the U.S. is different than the FDD in Canada. And the provinces have different rules, and it's changed so much. I don't know all the rules today. Yeah. Before, you could get away with not registering in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but now you do, I think. And I think Nova Scotia has it. You have to. And not just that, but your FDD has to comply in Ontario to certain regulations that are different than they are in the United States. So whether you're going to Canada or if you're Canadian going to the United States, you need to make sure your FDD and your legal work's done right and get a good attorney that knows that stuff. And I'm sure if you were to reach out to John or myself at any point in time, we could kind of introduce you to some people that do that kind of work. So, checking those boxes is critical. But I think probably the most important point that John mentioned here that's worth noting is that making sure your business model actually works in the US or in Canada before you start selling franchises. I think that is absolutely critical. So I'm glad you brought that up. I want to move into a question I think we all have to ask ourselves, and that is, how do you at Everline create value for your franchisees? Like, what do you, when you sit about thinking, like, how do I make sure that when they pay me royalties, they feel like they get value back for those royalties? What are the kinds of things you work at Everline?
So where all that comes down to is I actually track that. So most franchisors, what they'll say is, well, I mean, you pay me a royalty and that's cost doing business. So you're part of a brand, you get support and all this kind of stuff here, right? For us, we actually, this is a concept I've called royalty return, actually. So it's quantitatively looking at, say you were to go and start Scott's line painting here today, right? We look at really, say if you were to go out and you were to get out initial equipment, if you were to go out and get start buying traffic paint or sealant or what have you, this is what you would initially pay. So, okay, initially, yes. But then over time, you would eventually grow the business and become a higher volume contractor. You'd start getting some different contact. So you'd start getting this. So it's a sliding scale actually that we track it on. And so it's something that we are that we keep track of because we, of course, work with our vendors. We work with we have an extensive tech stack, which I get into here in a bit. But more or less too is that our entire support system is EOS based, sort of the entrepreneurial operating system, and that is again just more value added in that piece here. And then on top of that, we actually go out and get them work through national accounts. So we just heard back from a real big one here today in Canada. It's really, really exciting here in the office here, but a nice big one that's come in. But it's been just another element there. So all we do is we track if the savings you make on getting the Everline rate for traffic ping, for instance. We are still lower than if you were to be a higher volume contractor. So a sliding scale there, or with the rate of a EOS I guess support team like that has actually a market value that's built into royalties, right? You start going into the software, the tech stack. They didn't need to develop anything in that piece there. And if they were to go out and just look at one of our franchise brochures and say, hey, they use this and this and this and this, I'm just going to look it up myself. We have volume discounts and things like that as well for that there. So it's just you're getting so much horsepower into their business that we're actually able to say you're getting X% back for every dollar that comes in for a royalty. So we're really really pleased about that.
Yeah, I love that, John. I'm just going to double down on that as well. From my experience in home service franchising, the two things that I think have to be focused on have to be: people join a brand because they want to be part of a network. If you have network and you have scale and size, you now qualify for national account work, like you're mentioning, right? Nothing makes a franchisee happier than knowing that they get either referrals from other brands in my network, other brands we own that we help they get business from, or they're getting contracts for work they couldn't get on their own because they are part of a large enterprise, or we're bringing them work because we have a national account program. Like, no question, you've got to be investing there. Second is buying power, right? There's no, if you're buying on behalf of one, even if you're a large one, you could never beat someone that's buying on behalf of 150. And so passing on those savings to your franchisees is critical. So I think you nailed it. And so any aspiring franchisors, great advice there for you.
I would also add to it too is we do certainly put a lot of effort in facilitating a highly collaborative franchisee network because you can get into a franchisee network where everyone just has head down, focused on their business, and they don't really look outside of it. We do quite a bit of webinars, podcasts. We have a Slack channel with all our franchisees on there, for instance, where it's just going off. It's off the side of my screen here right now. People say, hey, how do I quote this? How do I do this? Hey, I've had this issue. And just everyone being engaged and being a part of it there. And it's just another large element that we follow there.
Yeah, we call that community, right? Like human beings want to be part of a community.
Absolutely.
You see it everywhere, whether it be in sports, religion, politics. There's a community that exists. And having you just did your convention, so you know what this is like in Cancun. We just did ours in September in Orlando. That adds a ton of value. And on that note, we do have a few brands presently doing what we call peer groups. Some people call them flight groups, mastermind groups, where you take like-minded franchisees, 5 to 7 of them, and they meet every month, every week, every quarter in person, and so forth. And then we help moderate that by adding value to that structure to that.
Absolutely.
And franchisees, as you said earlier, right? How do you grow a great company? You find top performers, you surround yourselves with those people, and then some, and the business levels up. Well, the same thing happens with franchisees. If you've got 5 of your top franchisees spending time with together, you're going to see them just keep moving up the ladder. Absolutely. So that, in my view, is also a big responsibility of any franchisor. Give your franchisees community. I know some people get nervous about it. Like, what if they talk, and are they going to talk bad about me? And you know what? It's okay if they do. It's like, that's all right.
Yeah.
The value they get from that is too great.
Yeah, I would say that, in that scenario, what if they talk and do this or whatever, and then it's like, okay, I mean, good. I mean, as long as it's a constructive partnership-based relationship. I mean, there's good talking, there's bad talking, there's constructive talking, there's all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. I mean, we want their greatest good. We mean them no harm at all. We're partners, and we can't succeed without them, and vice versa. And it's just a really unique relationship there. And that's, and two, we, a part of that too. I mean, running a business is challenging for everybody, and there's going to be ups and downs and things like that. And we provide plenty of areas for outlet for the franchisees, not just a once a year survey or anything like that. We do a monthly. We do like a monthly news show. It's a live show. It's where we say, all right, hit us with the hard questions. Even just like the questions that are rough, and we hit them head on. And the whole point is to be as transparent as possible. And when we screw up, we say, we're sorry, we screwed up here. We're gonna. I like
how you said sorry. By the way, you said it just perfectly.
Sorry. Yeah.
Just the way we would want you to say it.
Exactly.
Yeah. The ideas of town halls, right? Like, you've got to be doing a town hall with your franchisees. At 5-star, every brand president leads a town hall. We actually have a roll up of all those brands and do a semi-annual, sometimes quarterly. It just depends if we've got enough things to say, town hall, where we do answer those tough questions. And it is critical. Give the people the opportunity to speak.
100%.
So, great points there. I want to jump into, and thank you, Diane. I do love the way Canadians say sorry as well. I want to jump back into this EOS mindset, KPIs, scorecards. I think we all get value when we hear about what people use to measure their business. And so given that you use EOS, and I'm sure you have a scorecard, what are the 3 or 4 things that you would say, Scott, these are the things I look at the most to manage the business and know if we're on track or not?
Certainly. So, in EOS, I mean, the KPIs you can look at are endless, right? But you need just like critical, super important pieces there. So what we landed on, first and foremost, I think the most important thing is franchisee unit level economics. Are they making money? That kind of thing. And for us to understand, we have not just look at revenue, but also primarily we really hyper focus on the gross margin, because we generally know how they, their general expenses of the business. But as long as their gross margin is hitting that sweet spot that we have there, we know they're going to be fine. And then, of course, that, further down the support, if they're overspending on something, then we can dive into that. But to me, that's them running a really solid, profitable operation. And that's, and in our, and it's just like that. All the variables there is a big thing. So the next one I would say is actually, we keep, I mentioned a monthly survey going on. So we actually have a net promoter score for our franchisees to say, we ask out of 10. We asked 2 questions. Out of 10, how happy am I to be a franchisee? Right. And it'll vary from month to month. And it's cool to kind of see how, cool to see just kind of how in what season people are feeling good or not feeling so good. And then we also asked, out of 5, how do you feel your business is doing? because we can have franchisees that are actually doing relatively well, but they don't feel like they are. And so we
Uh-huh.
wanted to go and reframe it as such. We've had one of our top franchisees who won one of our largest awards this year. She, in the very beginning, was like, you know what, I'm just failing. This is not good. We're like, this is a typical startup. Like, this is okay. These are common issues. Let's go. And then just a total mindset shift once you started seeing the greater context of all of that there. And then for us to very simply, what percentage of the franchisees are we getting timely, accurate financials from? So,
Okay.
because to me, that is I mean, any franchisor, as I'm sure yourself will know, sometimes getting accurate P&Ls of franchisees is a challenge. But to me, it's a base discipline for any really solid business owner, and we got to figure it out in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that we're constantly working on improving. And that tells me that the franchisees, they have the information. We're not just managing their business off of their bank account balance, and that we can operate accordingly. So, yeah.
You hit a few things I think are valuable there. I want to just talk about for a minute. On the gross margin, do you measure that monthly, or is that how often are you seeing that number?
We actually do it on a monthly basis, but we have software lets us measure it on a job by job and per service basis there as well. So,
so your software helps you track that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're able to see, hey, they're killing it in this service, but not so much in this service. Like, what's going on in that?
I love that laser focus on franchisee unit economics, not just the top line, which is where they're paying royalties, which we do have to watch, right?
Yeah.
That is important. It's kind of like drive for show, putt for dough mentality, right? You can have a great top line, but if the bottom line isn't following, there's a serious problem.
100%.
Timely and accurate financials is an interesting metric. I never thought about that as being something I would look at as a number, like a percentage of, I'm assuming it's like percentage of franchisees that are reporting.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have seen this happen a few times. One of our brands does a ad fund rebate. So it's a 2% ad fund. And then franchisees who report their financials on a timely basis get some portion of that back to them, paid to them. It's either quarterly or semi-annually. And as a kind of, if you stay compliant, we get this back to help spend on your advertising and so forth. And so it has helped get our financials in and make sure that they're accurate. And it's helped us focus on that.
That's a great idea.
And I love the NPS focus. You said you do it monthly?
Yeah, so we do it monthly. That we don't usually get. We maybe get about 25% response rate on that. It lets us keep a pulse. Then we do through franchise business review an annual deep dive, which is it's quite a bit of a deeper run. And I don't sit and wait till after the conference to get head of that survey. We wait till like smack dab in the middle of just like the rough season. When everyone's tired, we're a little more candid. I want to draw out the weaknesses, not sweep them under the rug.
Yeah, I love that you're using NPS. I think it's critical to have a score that you can look at and measure regularly. I love that you're doing that, even independent of seasonality. Like you're actually able to see, like there are some times in your business that are slow, right? Like if, for example, I have a Mosquito Shield franchise concept that, if you were to ask people how things are in like January and February, well, guess what? There's no mosquitoes. So, the business is really focused on just getting renewals instead of the year. Correct. But there's slow times. Painting was the same thing. Every year, once Christmas trees came out and around Thanksgiving, now Canada's Thanksgiving is October. So it was harder in Canada. In the US, it's November, but like November to January was always rough, right? Yeah. But measuring that's critical. And the fact you're using that as a means to keep track of the business, I think is really, really important. Great reminder to us all. Let's get into your team. And before we do, Jeff's got a question here for you. And yeah, by the way, we are at the end. We've got 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions, now is your time to ask those. Otherwise, I'll just keep going with John because I've got lots of stuff left. Jeff asked the question, what is your technology stack? Is it a single source platform or an amalgamation of applications?
Ours is an amalgamation of applications, however, with integration between them all. So it's, there's multiple tabs depending on what area of the business you're in. If you're in the prospecting stage, the sales stage, estimation stage, proposal stage, it's all there, but you're not entering their name and information over and over and over again. And so it's integrated in the back end so that the data transfers from website lead or prospect from HubSpot going from the marketing pipeline to the sales pipeline. That pushes to our proposal software, Proposify, and then once they win the project, that information gets pushed to our operations software, which we built out of Airtable, and then so it is siloed off. We just found that an all-in-one software for the multiple set of services we had, and just the depth in which we provided our overall marketing strategy and things like that. It was we just felt that was the best way to go, going more specialty at each stage.
Got it. And that, I think there's some words to the wise. I had a call just before this meeting talking about some technology challenges we're having in our tech stack, and each brand has, bigger or smaller issues. But I just can't express how critical it is to make sure you get that right before you scale. Because the information, like you were just talking about, this information you're tracking, if you don't have it available at your fingertips, it causes all kinds of problems. And I will tell you, like I tell people all the time, CRM is a bad word in my office. I hate talking about CRM switches. We're actually going through 2 right now.
Oh boy.
Where 2 of our brands are moving from, actually 3 of our brands are moving from a CRM they had prior to a new CRM. And that switch is so painful. It's worse than any Windows update you could have ever experienced personally, right? Because in that transition, this information is falling away. You're not getting it properly. People are getting used to a new system, and management needs the information to make decisions. We need it. So investing early, I have heard more and more, it's almost impossible to find a CRM that does it all.
Oh, yeah.
It is, in fact, I'd almost would say it might be impossible. So you do see a lot of frequent integrations with other forms of drip campaign tools, as an example, or texting tools. And, at ProNexis, a brand that we own that does call center, we integrate frequently with different CRMs to manage their entire lead flow into that system properly. So super critical that stuff gets integrated effectively. And thanks for asking that question, Jeff, and answering John. Okay. My question for you, most important hire. And I know you backstage, you said to me, Scott, like there's been different moments.
Yeah.
But today, let's talk about today. You're at 100 and how many franchisees? 120 franchisees?
110 right now.
110 franchisees. You're kind of arriving. What would you say? You're the visionary of the business. Yeah. The most important person in your business. Who is it? Why is that person the most important person in the business?
Well, I mean, I have to go I have to go with my integrator in this whole thing. So okay. I had so that would be my COO Cameron. Cameron there is certainly the yin to my yang in that there, and we've always been able to complement one another. But it's an EOS term where you have somebody who's able to see the big picture, but usually somebody who has that superpower of being able to see the big picture doesn't have the superpower of being able to get through the minutia of the details. I find those exhausting, right? No, it's supposed to just happen this way. And then, my integrator would be like, it's not going to be that easy. Here's how we're going to do it together. And go from there. So, I would say that, over the years, of course, it changed. But, right now, just for me to be able to spread my wings into my natural way of how my brain thinks, I certainly need a team under me and managed by a proper integrator who's had just really has been able to take my vision and just the concept of it, that we're a great employer, we're a friendly place to work, that that we are really treating people super well. He's able to take that concept idea, apply it, and results are happening as a result.
Yeah, that's a great point. Not every founder is a visionary. It is frequently the case, I've noted, that a founder tends to be a visionary. I think they have to have some ability to have vision. Otherwise, they wouldn't have started something, right? It has to be there. But I have seen some founders also hold very much a COO style of leadership. So, they in fact are the integrator, and maybe they actually need someone else to be the visionary, which is kind of interesting idea. But making, as a CEO or a founder of a home service brand, making sure you have complementary. The key point there is finding someone that actually has that complementary skill set to your own that can round out the organization is super important. So I'm glad you brought that up.
To add to that real quick, I would say that at some point throughout the founding stages, there's going to have to be a mix of an integrator and visionary, but then there's going to be a point where it doesn't work as much anymore, right? And so I think that's when you start realizing, hey man, I can't do the things I want to do, or that I should be doing. Then that's when you start trying to find who's that angel. You're like, yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. In every stage of the business needs more often, but also different to get to that next level. Like you said earlier, if you want to get someplace, find someone that's gotten to that place to get to that place. Like you need to find people that can actually have experienced it to help you get to that level. And, I can speak from experience within our own organization. We've made a lot of hires over the last year and a half. And I cannot believe the quality of people we've attracted and how much more enjoyable the business becomes when you have the aces in their places. When that happens, the business gets so much more enjoyable. I got two more questions for you, and we're going to end. Think back to, it's been, when did you say you started? 2013? No, 2015? 2012. It's been a 12-year startup for you. And in those 12 years, I'm sure you've learned a lot. What would you say as like, Scott, if there is one thing that I would share with my younger self, knowing what I've learned today, I've done through 12 years of this. If I could go back in time and speak to that person 12 years ago, this is the one thing I'd want to share with myself. What would that be?
I would say if I were to talk to myself, the one thing, it would be the value of persistence with data. I think is kind of the combo of those things. It's really, you can, there's a point when you're young, you can work, from 6 a.m. till midnight, no problem, and keep going. And you get lost in that. Right. But then I would say that as you get older, that becomes less possible. You have to be a little more strategic in how you do things. And I think that is been a big thing. So I'd say to my younger self, find a way to get as many data points as you can and manage and build off of that. And if you don't like something, then persist until it's fixed is really the big piece.
Great advice, foundational advice in my view. I think every great business has at its foundation great information, because that's who make good decisions, right? And so I think you've hit something that's very, very valuable, and I think is often missing in many home service concepts, because there's so much going on out there, and we can't get it all. And just in my call earlier today, we talked about all these things that we want to know about why we lost a job, why we won a job, and what happened, and we don't have visibility into that unless we have good data. So 100%. Great reminder. Okay, last question. What if there was only one? I'll let you give two books, because I think your price on that reads a lot. If there are only two books you could recommend to any home service franchisor, what would it be?
So, I guess number one would be Traction, if that's a gimme. But I would say which is the foundation of the EOS system. I've always been an autobiography guy or a biography guy. I really enjoy just hearing about, especially in the early stage, when you hear stories of, grinding it out by Ray Kroc, then that's out there. Just even his story of even, when he's 52 years old, starting at McDonald's and all the challenges he's having. And this is when franchising is nowhere remotely as developed as it is here today. And just hearing his challenges that are out there. I think I'd say that was always an inspiring piece there. And it's not necessarily it has nothing to do with home services or even what I do. I'm not a restaurant franchisor, but it's more about, you're going to come to crossroads and issues and resistance and friction. What do you do during that time frame? And I would also too, the next one I would say is actually it's the Amazon store. For the everything store is the Amazon story, which goes to a fanatical focus on the client and customer experience and dealing with scale that Jeff Bezos had. I find there's a lot to learn in just what he did in those things.
Great recommendations. I love reading books. I need two more. This was actually quite selfish. I'm lining myself up with some more reads. So I thank you for sharing those with me. John, this has been fantastic. I loved our conversation. Learned a lot, and I've got some comments here. Steve actually made a note, write a better franchise agreement. That's kind of funny, actually, right? Like, you're probably right, Steve. There's probably a lot of that if I could talk to my younger self, I'd do better around the agreements as
100%.
well.
Yep.
And Bill just made a note. Great job, John and Scott. Excellent to hear a couple of fellow Canadians expanding and succeed in the U.S. Well, it's great to see. We got a Canadian groupie fest that's happening here. It seems like on our chat group. So I'm so happy to see you guys join us. And thank you all for participating. And I look forward to seeing you all hopefully next month. Actually, we got Stephen Montgomery coming on from That One Painter. I don't know if you know Steve at all or you followed him at all, but the guy's a machine. I think he's sold like 100 and some territories himself this year in painting. And so he's going to come on next month and tell us his story about as to how he did it. So
very cool.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you all next time.
All right. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video and more importantly that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.